But let's talk about these questions that, well, frankly, I have going into Big 12 Media Days, which is just next week, man. All right. First question is, who brings a quarterback? Like, I've always thought that the programs across all of our 131 FBS teams that bring a quarterback to Media Days feel real good about their chances going into the season because A, you know who the guy is. B, we know who the guy is. And C, yeah, you want that guy to get some shine because you're trying to pimp him for Heisman, votes. You're trying to get him as much media exposure as you can. You're trying to make sure that the television producers know who this man is if they are on national television, all of that noise. But I will be curious to see who past Dillon Gabriel, Quinn Ewers, is invited to Big 12 Media Days, or I should say, gets taken to Big 12 Media Days. I think Tyler Shuck is also a guy out of Texas Tech that we should be watching for, but it's really for me about Oklahoma and Texas, right? And we're going to get into a bit of that, but if Dillon Gabriel and Quinn Ewers are two of your top quarterbacks, and you look around the country, it's not necessarily indicative of even the top 10 quarterbacks in the sport to last year. Who feels like they got a guy? All right. Do the coaches believe the conference is as thick from top to bottom as I do? I think that anybody in the Big 12 could win the Big 12 championship. That includes West Virginia, who might be, the worst team in the Big 12 this year, but they're not terrible. They're just bad. Kansas returns Jalen Daniels, probably be at Big 12 Media Days. They'll be good. Devin Neal was their best player at tailback. They'll be good, right? I'm looking at other programs like Oklahoma, who had its first losing season of the 21st century last year and went into the transfer portal to correct such a thing, right? I'm looking at Kansas State, who came out of nowhere, or seemingly so, to win the Big 12 championship against a team that ended up playing in the national championship in Texas Christian. Texas Christian finished national title runner-up in 2022. Again, after going 5-7 in 2021. Nobody saw that coming. Finally, or I should not say finally, the bigger question of the three before we get to the next three. Do BYU, Central Florida, Cincinnati, and Houston feel like they can walk in, beat Texas and Oklahoma, and win the league? I will be curious to see or hear what Gus Malzahn says about that, what Dana Holgorsen says about that, what Kalani Sitake says about that. I'm going to be very, very curious to see if BYU, finally playing a real Power 5 schedule, can hold up, because Provo is not close to Orlando. For that matter, Orlando is not close to Provo. West Virginia got to go to both spots, right? Or at one point, we would think they would have to go to both spots. At least we're not. In football, I got to go check out the schedule to be right about that, but you get my point here. It is truly a cross-country conference for the first and probably next several years, given what conference realignment has done. But Houston has been a good football program with Dana Holgorsen. Central Florida has demonstrated it is a good football program through Gus Malzahn, through Josh Heupel, and even through Scott Frost, right? Going back to 2017. Cincinnati played in the college football playoff 2 years ago. These are good football programs who are probably going to show up and think that, well, if Texas Christian can make the college football playoff in this conference, why can't we? And they would be right to think so, because Texas Christian was one of these programs a few years ago. We're talking about Texas Christian, Andy Dalton, and Gary Patterson showing up to the Rose Bowl to prove to everybody that they're for real playing in the Mountain West. And now you basically got those sorts of teams joining this conference like Texas Christian did, and they could have the same kind of success. I'm very excited about Texas having to travel to Houston to play against that Houston program, because historically Texas has thumbed its nose at the University of Houston, and historically Houston has really enjoyed it when they've been able to beat up on Texas, but they haven't played that game in over 20 years. Matter of fact, the last time that Houston and Texas played each other, Art Briles was head coach at Houston. I'm very curious to see if they can get past Texas, if they can get past Oklahoma. Who do you think could beat them? And then which of these Texas programs is going to assume authority once Texas is leaving, which leads me to that next question of what's the mood when we talk about Oklahoma and Texas one last time? Okay. Chilly is what I got. It's going to be 100 degrees in Dallas, Texas in July, but it's going to be chilly when we talk about Oklahoma and Texas. Last year, Mike Gundy sat at the Days and questioned Why the hell are we even letting them talk? Why are they here? That's peak Mike Gundy, right? He's probably the only coach in the Big 12 that would do such a thing. But I think that was also the feeling. Why would you let them in on your negotiations? Why would you treat them as a regular partner? And they haven't, because you take a look at the schedule for Oklahoma and Texas. Big 12 is saying, don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you. They are absolutely up against it. And I think nothing would please Oklahoma fans more or Texas fans more than being able to run this table, win that Big 12 title, and then play in the college football playoff on their way out. They also need the lift going into, frankly, a conference that's better. It's just better. Oklahoma and Texas need to get on the good foot, like USC and UCLA over there in Pac-12, so that they feel good going into a much tougher league. All right. Were the coaches and players surprised that Texas Christian made the college football playoff after losing to Kansas State in the Big 12 championship? I'm actually, honestly, really, really curious about that, because ordinarily, Oklahoma in that spot, sure, we give them the benefit of the doubt, and they have, and then they get their head kicked in. Nobody wanted to see that happen again. That's why there was so much talk about, no, if Oklahoma wins the Big 12 again and they don't do it with an undefeated season, we're not going to select them because we've been burned by them. They don't show up. The last time they did, double overtime in Pasadena. Every other time, getting our heads handed to us, all right? So for Texas Christian to lose that game to Kansas State to be the Big 12 champs, but still earn selection to the college football playoff, I found really, really interesting. And do you feel that that is an indication that the college football playoff selection committee respects the Big 12? Or do you think that's an indication that they just respected the story that was Texas Christian? I mean, there was nothing about Texas Christian that said dominant. Nothing. They won a bunch of football games, but they also need to come back in a bunch of football games. They need to run a fire drill against Baylor to keep their record intact, just to make that Big 12 championship game. And then nobody expected them to put up the fight they did against Michigan, let alone win 51-45. And then they came back down to earth against a juggernaut, Voltron, over there in Athens, Georgia, in the University of Georgia, right? The better game was actually Georgia versus Ohio State, which was a missed field goal away. But you get my point here. What do they think it means that Texas Christian represented them last year, not just in that playoff, but in the national championship game? And does Texas Christian feel like this is our conference now? Why wouldn't they? Is a good question. I would say, being a private Christian school in North Texas, better watch step. That's all. Southern Methodist thought that they was kings for a little bit. A&M got real mad about it, started throwing oil money and vanilla envelopes at most other players, and they had something to say about it in the Southwest Conference. Texas is always going to be Texas. Texas made more money than everybody but one program in 2022. And they can't win the Big 12 championship. Now, I'm going to go off on this for just a second because I need this to be clear. You're going to tell me that, hey, that money is made and or spread across all athletic programs. I'm going to say, yeah. But which one of those is the most important athletic program at any university? We don't look to other sports to carry the mantle of our university. We look to the football program. We play football in the United States of America. That's what we do. In Canada, they play hockey. In England, they play soccer. Here we play football. So I don't want to hear no talk, no more about Texas not being great. You make the most money. You get the best players. You run roughshod over people in the offseason because you do have so much. At least do us the service of being good. 8-5 is not good. Beat 10 wins, 11 wins every damn year. All right. Finally, which program projects as the one to assume control? I answered that question just a little bit. Texas Christian projects, but I can't call it, man. You go 5-7 in 2021. You play in the national championship game. You finish national title runner-up. It's all out the window. It's another reason why I continue to say this, and I'm going to say it. Why is it if I say Colorado and Deion Sanders are going to be good, y'all catch an attitude? But when Texas Christian goes from 5-7 to national title runner-up with a new head coach, the second best quarterback on campus, and running a fire drill against Baylor, you don't catch an attitude too. Question yourselves. I know the answer to this. Question yourselves. But if it ain't Texas Christian, it could be Iowa State. It could be Baylor. It could be Texas Tech. Hell, they want it. They're throwing all they can behind Joey McGuire down there. It could be Oklahoma State. It could be Oklahoma State. It could be Oklahoma. I can't say it with a straight face. Kansas is going to be good, and Kansas State's going to be Kansas State. All right? Like, you could see anybody taking control of this conference, and that's before I get to the newbies, right? Houston's going to be able to recruit. Central Florida has demonstrated it's going to be here. BYU has demonstrated they're good, right? Cincinnati's demonstrated they're good. Like, it's going to be fun. I don't know that we're going to see who's assuming control of this conference for at least 5 to 7 years. And even then, we could have 7 different conference champions because that's how thick they are, even with Oklahoma and Texas leaving the conference. Thank you for watching the #1 college football show. Please remember to subscribe to the channel and like this video so that you don't miss any of the best college football coverage in America.